All right, we're going to get into portrait retouch. We're going to use non-destructive editing. We've talked about non-destructive editing in several different exercises where we use different tools to edit a picture without touching the background. We're going to get into retouching a portrait. Portrait restoration is part of the Nevada State Standard for exploring restoration and retouching techniques. We'll do restoration a little bit later. But we're going to get into portrait retouch, which is something that clients ask for all the time. They always joke, oh, make me look 20 years younger. We're not going to quite do that. We're going to try to work as normally as possible, make the image look as normal as possible while flattering our client. Okay. Some important concepts that we need to get into are first, again, non-destructive editing. Some parts of that are sampling all layers. All these tools, we've done this before. Make sure that when you are using any tool that you turn on sample all layers. Okay, make sure that they are building onto a blank layer instead of working on the background layer. Okay, make those blank layers for every tool change. Okay, this is important. A lot of the tools, for whatever reason, don't play nice together. Anytime you change tools, I recommend you making a blank layer. Okay. And again, do nothing to the background layer. Don't touch it. Leave it alone. That way you can go back and start all over again without hurting the image. You can get rid of different layers, but as long as you've got that background layer at the bottom, you can always delete a layer without getting rid of the whole thing. Okay. Next, flattering your client. Okay. It's important that your client look their best. Okay, don't go overboard. Okay, there's a lot of controversy out there, a lot of things going on, talking about overdoing your editing, where you over smooth the face, change the face shape, things like that. We don't want to do that. We want to make our client look like their best self. Your client had the best skin day. Whatever circumstances may be, it's your client on your best day. You don't want to make them unrecognizable. You don't want to overdo it so that the retouching is obvious. Okay. Important thing is to talk to your client first. Okay. There may be a scar or there may be birthmarks or something. Things that they want to stay on their face. Things that they don't want you to get rid of that you need to ask them about. Okay, so talk to your client, see what they want to keep, see what they don't. There may be like a beauty mark or something that they want to keep that you accidentally get rid of, and they might not be too happy. So just talk to your client, see what their expectation is. People are pretty open, pretty good about this kind of thing. Okay, when we talk about being too much, okay, when we start making our client look like somebody else, we start changing the face. In this image, notice that the nose shape has changed. A lot of her freckles are gone. Her chin looks thinner. It doesn't really look like her, okay? Now, somebody who doesn't know her might not know the difference, but that client is probably not going to be comfortable with all the things that you've done to them, okay? So it's important that you don't go overboard, okay? What we're going to do with our images, the steps that we're going to do is first, we're going to remove flyaway hairs. These are hairs that are kind of sticking up. If you got hair that's sticking out and it just distracts from the image, that's what we're talking about when we talk about flyaway hairs. Now, every hair that is away from the head isn't always a problem. You kind of got to learn to make judgment calls about this kind of thing. But, don't worry about it too much if you're unsure. Just look for hairs that kind of pull away from the image, okay? Next, we're going to remove blemishes using the healing tool. The healing tool has a few variants. We'll explore a little bit, but we'll mainly just stick with the spot healing tool, okay? Next, we're going to remove eye bags with the stamp tool. We're going to, take the dark circles from underneath the eyes. We're going to do it very gently. But it's a good way to kind of smooth kind of darker areas away without taking too much away. Then we're going to use skin smoothing using the mixer brush tool. I'm going to show you a couple techniques to make this look natural where you don't overdo the skin retouch, where you make it overly smooth. But this is a good tool to use using the mixer brush tool, okay? And then I'm going to finally show you a little finishing move where we're going to sharpen the eyes using high pass sharpening. Okay. So again, we're going to remove flyaway hairs, remove blemishes. We're going to remove eye bags with using the stamp tool. We're going to use skin smoothing using the mixer brush tool, and eye sharpening using high pass sharpening. Okay, so here we are. We have our image. This is a client that I worked with a few years back from my hometown. We have some flyaway hairs here. If you look around the edge, we have a little retouch to do, a little bit of dark area underneath the eyes, a few things that we're going to work on. If just in case you're curious, the spots on her shirt are actually raindrops. It was raining a little bit that day. It actually worked for us. We got some really cool images. But let's go ahead and get into this. Let's go ahead and go first to flyaway hairs. Okay. Again, for this, we are going to use the stamp tool, which is over here. We're going to make sure that we have current and below turned on so that we are sampling the layers that are below and the layer that we're working on so that we can get rid of these. Okay. Again, we need to make sure that we have sample all, or we use blank layers in order to get rid of things. Okay. Instead of working directly on the background tool. If you don't see a layer here, you've got a problem. Now you notice right here, this is a good tip right here. If you don't see the panel down here to start a new layer, it's because it's pushed down below. We're going to pull this up so we can see the bottom of our layers panel, and we have this plus button here that is going to add us a blank layer. Okay. Now when we sample all layers, we sample current and below, we're going to get the sample here. We're going to build it onto a blank layer. I'll show you how that works in a second. Now here's a trick. We can just simply use this as is. We can go here, we can click in, and we can brush down. Okay. One thing to make sure of is that we have a soft brush. Now if you remember from any exercise we've done before, you go over here in the menu here where it gives you size and give it hardness, and you want a brush that's a little softer but not too soft, maybe in the 50, 60, 70 area, that gives you a soft edge but still takes care of it. Right now I'm working at 80% opacity. Okay, that's giving me a pretty solid takeaway, and it's really not showing up. We can get rid of these flyaway hairs without making it obvious you can't see the edge of the brush. One thing to remember, okay, remember that we use the Alt key and we sample. Notice here we have patterns that are in the background. Okay, make sure that you line up with the pattern. If I don't line up with the pattern, if I go here and I'm going to Alt click and then I move over here and I start building it, notice that I'm messing up the background. Okay, the brush is going to align with wherever I start this, so I am going to make sure that I'm going to line up with the line back here, and I'm going to move straight down, and notice that there's a preview here in the brush that shows you where I'm going to go, and I'm going to line it up so that when I move around and take these hairs out, that it doesn't take away, it doesn't mess up the background. Okay, so here I am working in, notice that I'm making lots and lots of clicks. Hopefully you can hear that. If you can't, I am making lots and lots of clicks. If I do this in one motion and I never pick up the brush, if I make a mistake here and I go backwards, and again that's Control Z, it undoes everything I did. I have to redo everything I did. So instead, I'm going to make lots of little small clicks so that if I make a mistake here, I can just go back in little steps. Okay, so you're going to edge around here and take out these hairs. Now one thing you can do is you can change the blending mode of your brush. If I'm working in an area and I want to just get rid of the hair and I don't want to mess with the background, I can change my brush to a darken blending mode. Okay, I can go in here and it's only going to affect things that are brighter than my sample. Okay, So it's going to take out the hair. It's going to leave the background alone. Okay. Now, one thing you might run into is if you're working in an area where the hair and the background are kind of similar, it's going to leave ghosts here. It's going to leave a little bit behind because it's not darker than the background. So you may need to transition back to normal. Okay. And again, make sure that you're lining up with that background so that it blends. Okay. And I'm working in here. I'm working in little clicks to take out these flyaway hairs. This is where it becomes important that you don't use too soft of a brush because you don't want to ghost these flyaway hairs. I'm trying not to leave anything that gives away that I am using a brush to get rid of these hairs. I don't want ghosting. I don't want too soft of an edge. Okay, and I've made some mistakes here. A great thing about working on a blank layer is that you can layer mask like we've talked about before. Or if I've made a mistake, I can make a layer mask by clicking the layer mask button as we've talked about before, and then I'm going to paint black and hide it so that I'm not getting rid of anything. Okay. Of course, you have to watch out that you don't remask in some of your hairs. Okay. So I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to finish this out. Okay, and sometimes you have to kind of fudge the background a little bit to make it work. Nobody's ever going to know. Okay, and I'm going to go in here and finish this part out. Okay, I'm not going to be too in-depth on any one tool because I want you guys to practice and get an overview, so I'm not going to be too nitpicky about things to start out with. I just want to give you an overview. Okay. Alright, so I've gotten rid of my flyaway hairs on the sides there. I still need to do the top here. Okay, it's not too bad. Okay, where I've left some of the hair there, but I've gotten rid of the hairs that stick up. And again, because we've worked on a blank layer, notice that I can click the little eye here in my layers panel, and it shows the difference. Notice that now her hair's not sticking up, it's not frizzy. It's now we've tamed her hair. Okay, something to think about just when you're shooting, and apart from retouching, try to take care of these things ahead of time. Have detangler on you. Check your client's hair. It's much easier to do it on set than it is in Photoshop. It can be very tedious. It can eat up your time. Okay. All right. So next we are going to remove blemishes, and again I'm switching tools. So I'm going to switch brushes. Before I do that though, I'm going to label my layer here. I'm going to layer my flyaway hair by double clicking the name here. Make sure you don't double click the layer, double click the name. And I'm going to call this fly away. Okay. Make sure you label your layers so that you know which layer you're working on. So I'm going to make a new blank layer. I'm going to label it ahead of time, and I'm going to call it blemishes. Okay. Sometimes if you're working with many layers on one thing, you may want to just make a folder and label a folder, which I can show you in a second. So I'm going to switch over to the spot healing tool. Okay. Again, make sure that sample all layers is clicked. In my case, it is. You can also change this hardness of this brush so that it's a little bit soft, so that the edges will blend in better. Now I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. Again, Control Plus is to zoom in. Typically, this is as far as you want to zoom in. You don't typically want to zoom in any farther than 100%. Okay. If you go any closer to 100%, you're kind of working in an area that is beyond the naked eye's ability to see. It may help you in certain areas where you're trying to get more control, but typically 100% is about as far zoomed in as you want to be. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and take these out. I'm going to build them onto this blank layer that we've created. Tip 2 is if you want to hold down the Alt key and right click. This is how I resize my brush. I hold down the Alt key, I right click, and then slide side to side here, left to right, and it will change the size of my brush. This is a very good thing to know. It'll speed you up when you're doing retouching, where you have to do a lot of retouch. Okay. Now here's the thing. typically when you want to retouch, it's a good idea to work in a pattern so that you don't miss things. So we're going to start at the top of the forehead, go left to right, and work our way down, okay? So I'm going to look for things that I might want to retouch. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this hair right here. And notice I click and I drag to get rid of larger areas. And even when I'm doing a spot, I don't typically like to just simply click that spot. It will work. It will pull things in from the sides and remove the blemish. But if you want it to look more natural, I tend to make little squiggles, okay? It tends to blend the area better. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this line on her forehead, this worry line right here. And I'm going to go ahead and just look for spots. Now, you don't have to get rid of every tiny little detail. You're mainly looking for larger blemishes. You probably don't want to get rid of things like little beauty marks or moles. Mainly look for things that are blemishes, that are actually things that your client wouldn't want on their skin. Look for little white heads. Unfortunately, when you do a lot of retouching, you do get to know your client's face very, very intimately. Again, one thing to look out for. Now here, let's look at this really quick where I've made this blemish removal. It has created a ghost area. It's very obvious that I have retouched there, okay? If you get a spot like that, you need to go back and redo it, okay? Again, Control Z. Or you can also, if you have an area, you can simply erase it, okay? And I'm going to go and I'm going to redo that area so that it's not as obvious, okay? Those are the times when you might want to zoom in a little bit closer, okay? So again, I'm working from left to right, and I'm taking out areas. And notice again, I'm making little patterns to try to get rid of areas so it's not as obvious. And I maybe kind of drag through these areas. I kind of pull from a good piece of skin to the blemish. Okay. We're just working on getting rid of these little white heads. Okay. All right. So we've done pretty well there. We've gotten rid of our white heads. You may just take a peek back across the top. Okay. Notice right here that I've gone over these several times and it is not doing the trick. Okay. This may be where you want to switch over from the spot healing tool to the healing brush tool. The healing brush tool will let you grab from different areas. So if I want to sample from a clean area here and then erase a different area, I can do that. I hold down the Alt key and click on the area I want to sample from, and then I go to the area I want to get rid of. So sometimes you have to switch tools to make it happen. Now if you're using different healing tools, it is okay to work on the same layer. If I switch to the stamp tool, you need to switch layers. You need to make another blank layer because they will not work well together. They will create ghosts and they will create all kinds of different abnormalities that won't look right. Okay, so let's zoom out here. We may want to take out this area a little bit. Okay, I think that's okay for our purposes. Okay, so if we've done the blemishes, it looks natural. You can't tell we've been there, but we've removed the blemishes from that day. Okay, we're trying to make, again, our client look their best on their best face day without overdoing it. We don't want to remove too many things. Okay, next we are going to go ahead and try to soften up these bags underneath her eyes a little bit. Okay, we don't want to completely remove them. They kind of help with her smile. They're part of her character. We don't want to do it too much, but we're just going to lighten them up. So we're going to go ahead and make another blank layer. We are going to make a layer called bags. Again, we double click on the name and then type in the name. And we're going to switch over to the stamp tool. Okay. Again, we're going to make sure that we have current and below on. We're going to need to dip down the opacity all the way to about 11%. That's my magic number. I don't know why. Mainly because when you type on the keyboard, you can type in a number for your opacity. Okay. In this case, I'm going to hold down the shift key and I'm going to type 11. 11's fast to type, and so that's usually why I end up on 11 for my opacity. Okay. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to make my brush not too big so that it covers too big of an area, not too small so I end up making lots of lines. Because if I click here and I do it, it's going to make lots of lines. It's harder to see. Let me pull up the opacity so you can see this a little more. If I do it too small, it makes lots of lines like this. If I do it too big, it's going to make too big of a stroke and it's going to cover it too much. Okay, so I'm going to make my brush at 11% opacity. I'm going to put my flow at about 50%. Flow basically means that it's how much of the sample it takes up, how much of the detail. We don't want to pick up too much detail. We just want to mainly pick up the color. So we're going to go ahead and use about 50% flow, 11% opacity. We're going to make our brush not so big that it picks up this area here. We want to pick up this light area here. So we're going to click, we're going to alt click and sample here, and then we're going to brush it in, okay? And again, lots of little strokes. We're just kind of softening up the color right here without taking out all the detail. Kind of take out these rougher shadows here without removing too much of the detail so that it looks unnatural. So let's zoom out and look what we've done here. So we've kind of softened up the eye bags without overdoing it. We could do a little bit more just to even it out here. Okay, so not looking too bad. Soften up the eye bags without overdoing it. Okay, all right. Next, we are going to do skin smoothing. Now, I'm going to warn you ahead of time, this is going to look overdone before it looks right. Okay, you're going to overdo it to make it look right. All right, so first, we're going to make our blank layer for skin smoothing. Again, we're going to name this layer skin smoothing. Okay. And then we're going to use the mixer brush tool. So we're going to go over here to the brush. We're going to click and hold down, and we're going to find the mixer brush tool. Now this is very important that you set this in the correct mode or it will not work. Okay. So make sure that your brush is about 50% hardness. Make sure it's a round brush. And we're going to go in here and we're going to change custom to moist heavy mix. This is very important. It has to be on moist heavy mix. What this is going to do is it's going to sample from all these different areas. It's going to kind of build a mesh of color that you're kind of putting a goop all over the skin. Okay, sounds attractive. All right, so we're going to go to sample all layers. All right, very important again that we're sampling all layers. We're sampling the colors that are underneath, and we're going to mix this skin together. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to again start up here at the top, and we're going to mush the skin tones together. We're going to kind of smudge it around. Okay, so if you notice, I'm going to make little circular lines. I'm going to do it in clicks. This is one where you don't make lots of little clicks. Instead, you click and you make circles. Okay, make lots of little circles. Now, one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to smudge from the hairline in. You don't want to pull the hair into the image. If you're going to brush into the hair a little bit, you want to brush from the skin into the hair, but mainly you want to try to avoid the hair as much as possible. Okay, so I'm going to be smoothing these areas in. I'm going to make sure that I get all the different areas of skin. Okay, I've made a mistake right here where I've pulled some of the skin up. I'm going to go back. Make sure that you don't pull the dark details into the skin. It will not look right. Okay, so I'm smoothing through here, trying to smooth the skin tones. Okay, and again, it's going to look overdone before it looks right. Okay, we're overdoing it to make it look right later. Okay, so I'm smoothing the skin here. Make sure you don't pull too many of the details off, like don't reshape the face, but we're just smoothing through here. And yes, it looks very, very overdone. That's okay. We're going to fix it in a minute. Okay. Now, if you're wondering if you've missed a spot, because you don't want to miss a spot because the detail will show up and it will throw you off, you can hide the background layer and you can see where you've done. Any place that's showing skin, you have gone over. Okay, so I've gotten pretty much all of it. You don't want to do the lips. You don't want to smooth the lips out. Get down here in the neck area. I've cropped this image down from its original size so that way we don't have to do as much. I'm going to go ahead and smooth down here in the neck area. I think we're almost done here. Okay, so we have smoothed out the skin. Again, if you hide the background layer, you can see what you've done. I've done all of her face. Maybe just a little bit down here. Okay, so we've got the skin smoothed over. Now what we're going to do is we're going to back this off. We're going to find the opacity for this layer right here, and we're going to back it off until it starts to look more natural. Okay, about here. We're just trying to blend together a little bit of the skin tones, okay, so that it smooths out the skin but doesn't look too overdone. Okay, if we back up a little bit, it smooths out some of the pores, smooth out some of the skin without looking overdone. There are also different ways to do this that look even more natural, but for our purposes, this is what we're using. Now, I'm going to show you a real quick trick that'll help you even get it even more natural looking. What you can do is you're going to go down to the background layer and you're going to select all background, the whole background. So you're going to hit Control A and then you're going to copy it, Control C. I'm copying the background. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a layer mask on the skin smoothing, and I'm going to hold down the Alt key to see the layer mask. Right now it's all white. I'm going to paste my layer mask. Okay. Now what this does is this is going to show through my layer. Okay. Now here's a problem that I've overlooked. Let me go back and redo this. Notice that when I do this, it's showing the blemishes from the layer below. This is a mistake I've made. I need to make a stamp layer. Okay, I need to make a layer that has all my edits already done so that I don't show through the blemishes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control Shift Alt E. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this stamp layer. I'm going to get rid of it in a second. I'm going to make my layer mask. I'm going to Alt click my layer mask and I'm going to paste my layer mask. Now my layer mask has all my edits on it and I made a layer mask. Okay. Now what's happening here is right now, and again I'm going to Alt click it, is anything that is light, it is going to show through. Anything that is dark, it's going to hide. So any of these fine details like her dimples or pores or anything like that is going to show through a little bit more on my skin smoothing layer. Okay, so if I go and I'm going to delete this layer because I want to work non-destructively, I don't want to hide my edits because I don't need it anymore. Okay, so now on my skin smoothing, if I even pull it up a little bit more, it's going to hide my edits here, so it's going to show this, and I can show you the difference. If I shift click, I can hide a layer mask. Look at the fine details that are coming back using that tool. It'll help your skin smoothing look a little bit smoother. I mean, a little bit better. It'll look more natural. Okay. All right. We've done our skin smoothing. I'm going to hit Control D to get rid of my dancing ants here so I'm not working on a selection. Okay. So we've done almost everything. We've gotten rid of the flyaway hairs. Okay. I'm going to go back through this. We've gotten rid of the flyaway hairs. Okay. We've gotten rid of the blemishes. We've gotten rid of the bags underneath the eyes. And then we've done skin smoothing. Okay, I'm going to show you a little bit of a finishing move. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and make another one of those stamp layers. You hit Control Shift Alt E. Okay, and I am going to select just the eyes because we're going to sharpen the eyes. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to invert that selection by hitting Control, Shift, and I, and I'm going to delete everything but the eyes. So I'm going to hit the delete key, and it's going to delete everything on that but the eye. Again, I'm going to hit Control D to deselect everything. And let me hide these other layers here in the layers panel so you can see this. I've just got the eyes here. Okay. Now previously I've shown you guys how to sharpen. Previously I've shown you guys how to sharpen by using high pass. So what I'm going to do in this case, I'm going to go to my layer blending mode, and I'm going to turn it to hard light or soft light. We're going to try soft light first, and we go filter, other, high pass, just like we've sharpened in the past. And we are going to sharpen up the eyes. Now if you go too far, it's going to darken them too much. If it's too light, it's not going to show. But we're going to go about here. That looks good, and we're going to sharpen up the details in the eyes. Now notice it sharpens up the skin here. It's really obvious. We're going to layer mask it. So we're going to add a layer mask. We're going to invert it by hitting Control I or going up here in our properties and clicking invert. And then we are going to simply use a white brush, and make sure you switch back from the mixer brush tool to the regular brush. We'll take it all the way to 100%, and we're just going to brush white in here to show our eye sharpening. Notice it pulls out the little extra details in the eyes. It'll look that much sharper. Okay, so notice we're pulling out these little details in the eyes here. It's a really simple little move, but it really makes the eyes pop. You can also use curves layers like we talked about to brighten up the eyes. We can do that on a different time. Okay, so again, we've gone from here to flyaway hairs, to blemishes, to bags underneath the eyes, skin smoothing, and eye sharpening. Okay, I want you guys to go ahead and retouch this image, download it from Google Classroom, follow step by step along with me, and then eventually you're going to work on one of your own images and retouch. Again, remember to work non-destructively, work on these blank layers, name your layers, just like I forgot to name this one here. Make sure that you are never, ever, ever working on the background layer, that you're working on these blank layers.